Let's get this started. So welcome everybody. Hopefully everybody's in the right place. Let's start there. We are talking today about how to supercharge our tech talent teams and prepare for what's next in our economies. I think it's a pretty timely conversation that we're having here. We've been having a lot of conversations just across our CWS Council about the talent that we've been really recruiting and bringing into our organization over these last few years. And obviously there's been a little bit of shift as people start to look forward at what the economy might bring. So we're going to really dive into that topic today and talk about how we can really leverage and optimize some of these tech talent teams and really work on building some infrastructure to maybe advance some of the talent in our organization. So let's do this. We're going to get right into some housekeeping. Hopefully everybody can hear me. That's the first thing. If not, you're probably just seeing my face move. But if you have any issues, feel free to message our WebEx producer, Earl. We sit in the background. We can also help to get you connected if you're having some technical difficulties as well. We're going to keep the Q&A section open through this conversation. So we're going to encourage everybody, if you have some questions as we get into some of these topics, send them over to us. We'll try to bring them into the discussion as we go. If we need to, we'll save some of them for the end if we've got some time, but we guarantee you we'll make sure you get some answers to any of those burning questions that are out there. All right, and hopefully you can find that panel along the right-hand side of your WebEx window. Hopefully everybody's familiar with SIA. If you're not, I'll tell you a little bit about some of our services and offerings. You're probably most familiar with SIA for our conferences. We've got some great events coming up. Executive Forum actually next week in Miami for all those buyers out there. CWS Europe coming really soon in May. Hopefully we'll see everybody there in London. Apart from that though, we also have some amazing research and advisory products for our organizations that are part of our membership. We also have some great editorial products. You don't even have to be a member to even get access to some of those. And of course, an incredible webinar series that we're here being part of today. Also, check out some of our learning and development products, our CCWP and our SOW statement of work, expert certification. All of those items help to make you a more informed constituent of this industry. Here's some of that council list that I mentioned earlier. I've probably got one of the best jobs, I think, in the industry. I get to support all these organizations, some incredible brands, tons of diversity across these organizations as well. So we may even be leveraging some of the insights that we're starting to take away from this really powerful group. Let's introduce our speakers. We'll give everybody a quick second to tell us a little bit about yourselves. Ashwin Bharath, co-founder and CEO of Revature. Let's start with you. Why don't you take a second, say hello to the audience, and tell us a little bit about why this topic is important to you today.
Absolutely. Chris, first of all, thanks for having me. And Emma and Matt, it's a pleasure and honor to share the panel with you. Let me give a brief overview about Revature and then I will come to the topic, right? So a quick overview. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Revature. So Revature is the world's leading tech talent enablement firm and also the largest employer of emerging tech talent in the United States. So our clients have a very high competitive advantage in getting high quality junior tech talent and also a comprehensive talent transformation solution, which helps them to accelerate their internal talent from junior to mid-level at a faster pace, as well as with very good upskilling and reskilling solution. And till date, Chris, we have serviced over like 80 plus clients in US, deployed over 12,000 engineers in US. But the biggest pride, apart from the quality, is we are averaging 2.5% in Black and Hispanic tech software engineers compared to the industry average, right? And we have been part of the talent equation for the past 10, 12 years. And why this topic interests me is I think we are reaching an inflection point where when it comes to talent, the primary strategy for enterprises is to, depending on the need, to really dial up on the talent, or if the demand is not that high, to dial down on the talent. That is their core strategy, right? But we are now entering into an area where tech jobs it's heterogeneous. It's not homogeneous anymore. Upskilling is an absolute essential part. How do you help them so that they can help you achieve higher productivity from them, higher outcome from them? So we have reached a phase where upskilling, supercharging your tech workforce is no longer a conversation, it's no longer a luxury. It is an absolute essential. I think this year is going to be the beginning of it, and I would love to chat more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Ashwin. I have a feeling we're going to dive into upskilling today and get everybody almost to that expert level. We're going to make sure you see all the insights and how that specific concept is being leveraged in some of the organizations you're supporting as well. Let's go to Emma Vites Patel, the Senior Account Director for LinkedIn, also accomplished author. Let's take a second, Emma, and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about why this is an important topic for you.
Oh, thanks, Chris. And yeah, pleasure to be here as well. I think you gave my introduction away. But yeah, I'm Emma Vites Patel. I've worked for LinkedIn actually for 10 years coming up in August, which is a long time. Obviously starting off in London and then San Francisco, and now I'm currently based in New York. I'm also the author of The Graduate Bible, which is a coaching guide teaching graduates and young people about how to get jobs. And pre-LinkedIn, I had my own graduate recruitment business where I actually specialized in finding the best junior level sales talent, and I placed them into jobs and then I trained them on how to sell. And so my interest in this topic is a few things, but obviously my clients at LinkedIn, they're all going through digital transformation. They're all looking for ways to attract tech talent, retain tech talent. That's obviously super top of mind right now. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And we also have Matt Grover, President of Digital for Recruitics. Matt, can you take a second and give us a little bit of an overview of your role, what you do, and again, why this is an important topic for you?
It's good to be with everyone today. So I am the President of Digital at Recruitics. Recruitics is a full-service recruitment marketing agency that effectively manages candidate acquisition campaigns for approximately 400 customers across multiple industries, particularly tech. I currently manage several account teams here at Recruitics and have been here for about 3.5 years now. Prior to that, I spent almost 15 years at CareerBuilder in a variety of marketing roles, mostly focused on candidate acquisition. So, you know, with the various economic events over the last couple of years, I think we're living in very interesting times as it pertains to the world of recruitment and hiring, specifically the latest changes in the market and how it's impacting the technology sector. A number of our customers are asking us questions about what other things beyond recruitment marketing that they can do to improve their candidate throughput, specifically hiring within tech. There's been widespread layoffs, as we all know, but the right candidate with the right experience at the right comp isn't just falling out of the sky for everyone. So happy to be here and have a conversation today to talk about how we can improve hiring across tech.
Yeah, I love it. You say interesting times. I'll say no shortage of headlines and interesting articles, exciting things may be happening in this industry, and maybe some things that, I don't know, maybe just feel like a lot of the rumor mill or just I don't know, not a lot of substance behind some of the statements that are out there around some of this talent as well. And so, yeah, we're going to look at that economy. We're going to really get to the bottom of this today. So I'm excited. Ashwin, I think we need to start here because I think this really helps to ground a lot of our conversations. Maybe you can take us through this concept a little bit and tell us a little about this tech talent pyramid.
Happy to, like Chris. So Chris, if you think about it, this is the fundamental basis of any tech development, right? So agile is one of the most common way in today in which technology project developments is happening, right? So this tech pyramid forms the core of it, right? And just for simplified reasons, I'm not going to complicate with all the skills, but it is just simplicity. It's going to be junior talent, mid-level talent, and senior talent, right? This is how the tech talent is important. And having the right balance is extremely important, right? A junior talent is not a substitute for senior talent. A senior talent is not a substitute for junior talent. Each one brings in their own value, and we should use them at the right manner, right? I think that's the way it is going, and every industry operates in that, right? The reason why I'm telling we are starting with tech talent pyramid is everybody had different ways of acquiring talent for the tech talent pyramid. Most of the firms have their own senior talent. They used lateral hires, either a system integrator or a staffing firm to provide talent for their mid-level talent. And junior, some organizations have a strategic junior talent acquisition strategy, some don't, right? So currently, there is no comprehensive talent solution for the pyramid. It is like a different approach, different solution is what is happening. And that is changing. Every firm will have and should have a comprehensive tech talent pyramid solution. And in this, if you think about it, there are 4 terms which are quite important. The first one is talent acquisition, which is nothing but recruitment, right? Just a simple, plain recruitment. Our friends here, both Recruitics and LinkedIn, helps a lot with recruitment. The second piece, talent enablement, right? What it means is, how can you're hiring great talent, whether it is junior, mid-level, or senior, all might not have the exact same skills at the same level on what exactly you want. The most successful organization, in my opinion, put them through an initial set of custom training to bring all to the same level, same skill set, fix the gap so the productivity can be achieved faster rather than letting them go on their own. So talent enablement is nothing but how can you train them, a custom training based on the current need. I think that is talent enablement. And talent mobility and talent transformation, nobody's talking about it. It's going to be talked a lot. Talent mobility here is internal talent mobility, where this is nothing but the upward movement of your junior talent to mid-level. It is very important to have a very healthy pyramid. And talent transformation is, with the way technology is changing, it is changing at a crazy pace. And ChatGPT, we're talking about it. Quantum computing is coming. We are all at a major risk of cyber. Cyber is already a very top priority. And quantum computing will require every firm to have cyber-proofed security measures. That's going to come in. And because of this, the firms have a very robust technology roadmap. What they know, the technologies they're going to adapt in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But they don't have the right upskilling roadmap. So talent transformation is to have the right upskilling roadmap in line with every organization's technology roadmap. Those are the 4 terms here. Hope it makes sense for everybody here. And Chris, if we can move to the next slide. I am not going to teach economy here. I am no way qualified for it, but history repeats, right? So I just want to tell how with each economic cycle, technology and talent adaptation has changed, right? So the graph that you see here is whenever the 10-year treasury yield inverts with the 3-month treasury yield, historically we have always been in a recession, right? And that happened for us last year. So it's a very confusing economy. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So I'm not going to make any prediction, but whatever may happen, there is an economic volatility, and I'm seeing a significant change in technology adaptation because of that. So quickly coming through the history, during the 90s, enterprise apps adaptation became very, very powerful, right? And companies started adapting enterprise applications, but they did not have a talent solution. So their talent pyramid was nothing but a shell. It's just an empty shell. Then during the dot-com bubble, companies realized technology is here to stay, so they started outsourcing for scale. Very heavy outsourcing started. And because of that, they did not have a talent solution, but their leadership, they filled the leadership on the pyramid, but nothing else was happening. The financial meltdown, the Great Recession is when people started taking technology and talent very seriously. So they realized we have to own technology, or else we cannot create new revenue generating applications. So they own technology, but they used system integrator and staffing companies as talent provider of choice. So again, the pyramid was not complete. It was nothing but a diamond-shaped organization, right? And the interesting fact is what we are getting into now. Since COVID, everybody wants to have the right complete pyramid, and that is happening. That is universal. There is no change about it. But the problem, what we are foreseeing is, Chris, if you don't have the right talent optimization strategy, this pyramid shape which they want to build will become a pear shape. I think that is what we are seeing. And interestingly, unlike the previous economic cycles, we are seeing enterprises taking it seriously. They're coming with strategies to address talent optimization.
Yeah, and I look at this and it starts to feel a little bit like a roller coaster, maybe resembling maybe some of the experiences we've maybe had over the last few years, especially. I want to maybe touch on some of the things that are coming, but before we do that, Matt, maybe you can help us think about, in today's economic climate, maybe even looking back a little bit, what was top of mind for organizations? Does this resonate with you? Because I look at this and I always think, yes, I've never been strategic about the type of kind of level of an individual. I feel like it's always maybe pressed on that senior side. So what's top of mind for organizations, and what has been top of mind in the current, maybe previous economic climate?
Yeah, I mean, I think as it pertains to tech, there's going to have to be, a renewed emphasis on development and upskilling. I think you still need to focus on getting candidates, in the door. And once you get them in the door, there's going to be a variety of needs around, upskilling and career development specifically. I think what's interesting is there's been widespread layoffs in tech, but Google is still hiring for 1,000 roles right now.
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic, they had 119,000 employees. 6 months ago, they had 190,000. So there's definitely a corrective period within big tech that's going to need to take place. But these companies are still hiring because they're shifting their strategies, and they're shifting their strategies towards more forward-thinking pieces of tech that they're going to need. So they're getting more focused on specialized talent, and they are still hiring. And I think there's opportunity out there for non-big tech companies to hire tech people, but it's still going to be competitive for these reasons. And so I think having a fully baked talent acquisition strategy that starts with sending the right message to the candidate to connect with them is important. And then making sure you've got the right practices within career development and advancement once you get that hire is going to be key.
I like that. And I mean, you talk that focus on attraction. Absolutely. I think we went so long kind of post-pandemic without being able to really hire and looking to ramp back up after that kind of disconnect of our supply chain and that deficit. And so maybe we've got this elasticity that's starting to happen, right? So we've been attracting and getting them all in the door. So as we look forward, what does that start to look like, right? We've gotten all this talent excited and engaged, and so you start to see these signals of layoffs and mass reductions of workforce. What do the next 12 to 24 months look like for tech talent? And Ashwin, maybe you can help take us through the rest of this curve, and maybe that helps to explain it.
So it's going to be very interesting, right? I think as Matt mentioned, attracting talent is quite important, and companies are hiring. Attrition is still not gamed yet. So we saw record attrition in 2021 and 2022. It has come down obviously now, but it is still at a very unhealthy level. So talent attraction is also going to be there. So the fundamental problem is there are two problems, right? One is the available talent pool is small. Like out of the 2 million 4 years degree that is getting conferred annually in US, computer science just makes 100,000 of it. And out of that 100,000, hardly 70% of them get programming jobs, right? That is just a fraction of the annual talent need. So there is no other way for it, right? So attracting the talent and the right talent and expanding your horizon and getting into beyond what your comfortable level of hiring, I think that is very important. And that's what Revature has helped our clients. The second one is, what are you doing with your existing talent? Just if you are getting into new skills, just like bringing new talent doesn't make sense because one, it's not the right solution. Two, you don't have the right talent, right? So it's going to complicate things further, right? So in my view, companies are going to take upskilling and reskilling as a serious strategy. And there will be a significant shift in which they are approaching that. So for example, Chris, currently learning management for firms are content distribution, right? Like you get with tech content providers, learning providers, you just get licenses with them, give access to the employees, and they're on their own to learn it, right? So my colleague recently mentioned a very interesting analogy, which is we all have intentions to read book. And Emma, I'm going to buy and read your book.
Oh, thank you.
So we all have intentions to read book, but intention doesn't mean that you're going to read the book, right? That's what exactly happens when you're distributing content, right? And you're distributing content not on your employees' intention, on your own intention. And how do you know that they're going to read books? So training solution, upskilling solution should be a real practical solution in line with what is important in smaller chunks. It should be applied. And like I just read recently, what you do, you have a capacity to retain 90% of that in your memory. But if what you read or hear, just 20%, it can be retained beyond a point. It's very important. So applying to practical solutions. So having talent as the center of any solutions, any upskilling strategy is going to be the common theme. I think that, Chris, in my opinion, is going to be very important.
Yeah. And I mean, we just recently at LinkedIn, we just launched our workplace learning report. And so this is all very, very timely. I mean, I suggest everybody on this call to read that. And it echoes everything that Ashwin and Matt have just been saying, like 93% of executives, so we surveyed over 3,000 executives, 93% of them are very, very focused on retention. And the number one solution that they have is learning opportunities and creating career and learning opportunities for their talent, right? And I think it's a very justifiable concern, if I'm honest. Like 66% of employees said that they would leave an organization if they didn't think that the company that they're at would give them the right career and skill development. Like, and as you mentioned, Ashwin, like it's a huge amount. Like, you know, it's gone down, but it's still pretty huge, like in terms of attrition levels. And, you know, sorry, just to keep going, but another thing that's really top of mind for the clients that we see at LinkedIn is skills. You know, what was it? The World Economic Forum said that by 2030, 1 billion skills are going to be displaced. And LinkedIn in our report, what we've said is that, listen to this is insane. By 2027, half of the skills that were applicable in 2015 are no longer going to be relevant. And so that is huge. Like that is a huge implication. Like, and so going back to internal mobility, what Ashwin was saying, that's obviously very, very high top of mind. Like, how do we reskill the people that we have in our organization? How do we upskill them? And, you know, how do we retain them? You know?
Absolutely.
And maybe as a quick kind of qualifier, what types of talent are we talking about here? I mean, traditionally you say upskilling and retention and, you know, all of these concepts I tend to think of as a full-time workforce. Is that the right a way to think about that, or are we expanding that mindset to really all workforce?
I was thinking all workforce, but I know this conversation is predominantly on tech. But if you think about the skill, you know, what I was saying about skills being displaced, that's obviously primarily in tech, right? You know, me as a sales individual, I'm sure my skill might change, but not as rapidly as tech talent, as Ashwin was mentioning, like cybersecurity and like AI and ChatGPT and all of these different technologies. So yeah, from a retention perspective, specifically in the workplace LinkedIn report, that's everyone. But yeah, tech for the skill piece.
I think when most people historically think about the skills gap, they may not have considered tech within that category. But it's definitely there now. You know, companies are going to be running a lot more lean in a variety of functions, but particularly product and engineering. You know, we've seen a number of examples of that where product and engineering teams, the leadership is being combined. They're asking to be more efficient now and more effective than ever before. There's just large-scale scrutinization around the quality hires they're going to make. And so that's going to open the door for a lot of companies to be able to hire these individuals, but make sure that they are getting trained in upskills and the right skills that are forward-looking.
And Chris, just to echo Matt and Emma, fundamentally it's tech, all workforce, not just FTE contractors, it's all workforce, and also tech and tech enablement jobs, right? So there are 3.5 billion people worldwide that depend on tech for their job or for their life, right? And these are not social media users, right? This is actually like there is a dependency, right? Real dependency on it. So tech and tech enabled jobs are the significant key for it. And if you think about this, right? Like if you're asked to do a job and you hired for a certain skill set and the company decided to upgrade it to the next skill set. And if you don't give them tools and say that you're on your own to learn it, not everybody can do it. There has to be a proper structure, and it's the ownership of the company to reskill and upskill them, right? And with the way technology jobs are changing, which used to be homogeneous, with DevOps in place that made development heterogeneous. With Yesterday, it made testing heterogeneous. Now, with SREs, that's making even like production support heterogeneous. There is no other way except to adapt to these newer skills. So it is an absolute responsibility of the firms to do that, actually.
Oh God, Ashwin, this brings up a brilliant example that just came to mind, actually. So one of my clients is one of the largest financial institutions in the world. And their chief learning officer had a conversation with the chief technology officer and said, look, you know, how much time does your team need to spend on upskilling? And the chief technology officer said 25%. And then the chief learning officer said, oh my gosh, well, how are you going to do that? Are you going to be paying the contractors to come in to do that extra 25% of work, or are you going to be reducing your workload by 25%? Because obviously you can't expect people to do this on their own time. They're just going to get burnt out. They're going to leave. And this is a real problem. Like the CTO didn't know like how to answer that. And these are, organizations aren't thinking about this. We're telling companies that obviously upskilling and career development and is the future and is the most important thing, like to maximize retention and to think of the future forward workforce, but people are not thinking about it. So, yeah.
So, Chris, if with this is a very interesting slide, right? So if you think about the last 15, 20 years, I just want to show how there is a massive mismatch between an actual IT spend and the tech workforce, and still why we have a shortage, right? In reality, we talk about, oh, there's a big shortage in tech workforce, but the IT spend globally has gone up only by 3.22% at an annual growth rate, right? For the last 15, 20 years, that's it. And probably hardware might be less, services might be higher, so there might be a mismatch in workforce, but it's not a big one. At the same period of time, the IT workforce increased almost double, 5.6%, which is like, wow, we all thought there is a shortage, but the workforce has doubled, right? But if you take the top system integrators, their workforce grew by 15% at the same period of time. So why is that? Like, we're talking about the IT spend to the global workforce is double. To the top system integrators, it is like almost like 5 times. That's a massive mismatch. And there's a huge amount of tech workforce we have added. And why are we still complaining about lack of tech talent, right? That's when the next one comes into. If you see the right bottom corner, according to IDC, there are 28 million programmers worldwide. Out of that, only 5 million of them are of enterprise grade. What it means is, what I mean by enterprise grade programmers, they have the efficacy of an enterprise grade programmer is 3 to 4 times better than a non-enterprise grade programmer. So US enterprises or any firm are looking for enterprise grade programmers. To make matters even worse, by 2030, this 28 million programmers is expected to reach 45 million. And this 5 million enterprise grade program is expected to be 10 million. It is going to be complicated no matter how I run scenarios. To be very honest, it is impossible to achieve that feat. So the problem is going to get worse and worse. Rather than trying to just having a talent acquisition strategy, you should also have a talent transformation strategy internally to make your existing workforce better, right? And because if you move to the next slide, so just to like get a little bit of details on what I just spoke, right? If I now on the continuation of the talent pyramid that I showed initially, we talked about junior, mid-level, and senior. Majority of the mid-level programmers in US are considered as enterprise grade programmers, and they are also considered to do most of the programming. They are 4 times, they make more commits compared to a junior talent. Their bug fixing ratio is higher. Everything is better, right? So I think this is the key. Everybody, the holy grail of tech hires is the mid-level programmers, the 3 to 7 years or like 4 to 8 years. That is the holy grail of it. And this is where they have the biggest struggle in cost. The cost is way higher. This is where they have the highest attrition. They cannot predict with talent. I think that's why they go for lateral hires, getting box solutions instead of pyramid solutions. But what we will see is in the future, the common way at which talent acquisition will happen is junior talent. But at the same time, the best way to create more mid-level programmers is to have a faster upskilling mechanism and a higher accelerated talent mobility to move from junior to mid-level. I think this is going to be the new theme for the next 5 to 7 years. Enterprises that adapt the strategy are going to thrive. Interestingly, tech industry have a leg start here, but not the common conventional enterprise organization. So this, in my opinion, the talent pyramid, how talent mobility can happen is going to be a very, very common theme.
So Ashwin, you talk about expecting organizations to adjust to this, right? The first step of solving any problem is admitting you have a problem, right? So we start to see it here. There's some data to represent it, but what are organizations actually doing to adjust to this type of a strategy? And Matt, maybe you can share what you've started to see organizations doing to start to respond in this scenario.
I can get to the top of the funnel from an acquisition perspective in a minute, because that's obviously where Recruitics spends most of our time. But I think one of the things that companies are starting to do is really apply an emphasis on diversity and diverse leadership, specifically within tech. There's a lot of data coming out about the value of diversity, other than having just a robust diversity strategy across the organization. But within tech specifically, it can actually report and help on more innovation revenue than those companies that really don't have any diversity strategy within tech. There's a BCG study out there that found that companies with above average diversity on their management team specifically reported innovation revenue that was 20 percentage points higher than those with below average leadership diversity. So emphasis on diversity for sure is becoming even more important. There's additional studies on just the enhanced productivity that comes out of teams that have diversity in terms of background, gender, and ethnicity. So that's one of the things that I think companies are doing from an adjustment perspective. And then the other thing that they're doing is they've got to start telling a story within their talent acquisition funnel in general to get the right people in the door. And so tech candidates specifically, they need to see themselves working at a company before they take a job. So the typical EVP message that's standard across the board for all our organizations is just not going to work in tech. It doesn't work in most operational segments, but particularly within tech. There's an unpopular example of a company that was using images of people in suits within a lot of their messaging framework and advertising from a tech perspective. And that didn't resonate at all. Even if the message was spot on, it just didn't connect. And so their hiring funnel just diminished as a result from a tech perspective.
Yeah, we're seeing that at LinkedIn. I say to my clients that tech talent are 666%, like it's a huge percentage more likely to respond to content and seeing the projects that they're working on than anything else, like an in-mail or, a job. So we definitely are aligned with that.
And Chris, to add, I think a couple of studies that Emma said that it absolutely makes sense, right? Like 66% saying if they're not upskilling, they might leave. Another 25% requires learning as part of the regular work. I think this is high time companies have to do it. So in my personal opinion, I'm still seeing a lot of conversations, but serious conversations, not just like the old mechanisms where it is like a fringe benefit or it is like as part of your appraisal process. I'm seeing they're taking it quite seriously, and especially when older technologies are getting deprecated. I'm seeing that things are changing, but we still have a long way to go. But I think this year will be the beginning of that long journey that enterprises has to adapt.
Good. So I want to come back to the idea of how do we really, as employers, kind of optimize that space. But before we get to that, maybe you can share a little bit about what's happening on the candidate side in response to some of this shift. What are candidates looking for today, and are they embracing this new type of a model?
Yeah, so obviously I did quite a lot of research for my book, The Graduate Bible, and what I'm finding is that candidates are looking for three things today. So they're looking for stability, culture, and career and skill development. So, going back to stability, obviously there's been a lot of volatility in the market. There's been a lot of layoffs. And actually, this is an incredible time for non-traditional tech industries to take advantage because the safer bet companies are actually a little bit more intriguing now than they ever were before. Before it was always fast growth tech. And now, people are seeing that a little bit differently, which is good. Going back to culture, so alignment of values. So what Matt was saying about diversity, this is still huge for candidates today. They want to know that they're working with an organization that, shares their values. Like it's so important. So showcasing sustainability, diversity, whatever it is. Also remote work, like spending time with your family. We're still seeing at LinkedIn an unprecedented number of views and applications for remote work jobs. So that is still here to stay. And then, of course, career and skill development, going back to that stat, the 66%, that's huge. And also I read, what was it, in outsider.com, 80% of Gen Z talent think it's okay to leave a job within the first 6 months. And the number one reason they're leaving, guess what, is they don't see a career pathing opportunity for themselves at the company. And so, going back to Ashwin's point about this being a top priority, yeah, this is going to be the year that we see learning, getting a seat at the table with senior exec and being the most important, I think, priority of all.
I think that's interesting. So we actually run a survey, our temporary worker survey, where we just look at that contingent workforce population. And historically, we've always seen the number one driver is still, even through the pandemic and this recent economic turmoil, it's trying to find that permanency and that kind of full-time job. And I think a lot of organizations go to companies that they really resonate with, right? The companies that, I mean, Matt, you were kind of talking about this, people kind of see themselves working for these organizations. They see themselves kind of associating with some of those brands. How important is that for some of these candidates? I mean, is that really, big brands kind of win the day, or do you have opportunity as a smaller organization to appeal to that?
I mean, smaller organizations, this is the time and opportunity, right? Like some of these big tech layoffs have created some relative trauma and burnout for a lot of these tech candidates. And while a handful of them may have had some hefty salaries and whatnot, company culture and purpose plays a huge role in what they're looking for. 46% of tech employees that were even laid off are going to be focusing on smaller organizations because they've just have an inherent lack of trust in big tech. So it's a big opportunity for non-tech companies today. They've got to tell the right story at the top of the funnel. They can focus on looking for less experienced individuals if they have the right upskilling and career development programs built in-house.
And Chris, if you same as what Matt was mentioning, right? It's quite important that organizations should realize Gen Zs are the future of the workforce, right? That is like nothing about it, right? And rather than like trying not to adapt to the new way of working, it is important to find how can you find a hybrid or a bridge between your current way and your expected way from the Gen Zs, right? So I just read sometime like this weekend, I think the new trending topics among Gen Z is like, I forgot the term, it's called like take it easy Monday or something like that. They want Monday to be like low key, not like very aggressive, right? So
no meeting Fridays and no camera Mondays. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
I don't want to work.
Right?
So instead of making and cribbing about these points, some are relevant, some might not be relevant. It is quite important understanding that Gen Zs are the future of the workforce. What is the best strategy that you can integrate them? And to Matt's point, this is a very good time to hire some great talent, especially with the tech workforce. And for the first time, premium talent are okay to come and work for conventional enterprises. You have that opportunity. But the question is, yes, use that opportunity, but what are you going to do to retain that opportunity that you got? Like, how are you going to help them to be better? I think if you don't do that, the same pace at which these talent came to conventional enterprise, they will also leave at the same pace. It's really important not just to have an attraction strategy. You should also have a very high retention strategy, because high attrition or a great reputation risk for an organization, especially HR, that's a major risk. So it is a very high reputation management, and they have to take it seriously. With 80% of Gen Zs thinking they're okay to leave a job in 6 months, simple advice, take it very seriously.
Emma, I liked how you kind of pointed to, that opportunity for kind of growth and kind of that maybe training ground what these individuals are looking for. I mean, and Ashwin, I'm glad you brought up the generational divides here. I mean, is this an appropriate solution across all generations? Do we really see this focusing on that, kind of newer generation that's entering the workforce or starting to kind of emerge out of that lower level? Or is this also a retraining ground for people that are mid to late career type individuals? Because like I say, I always want to be careful here that they say we're not building initiatives that may in themselves even discriminate against populations from maybe an age perspective. Is that something that we're sensitive to in this scenario?
I think we should be sensitive. At the same time, any enterprise should have a comprehensive three-prong upskilling strategy, right? Or reskilling strategy. One is for career beginners. that's the Gen Zs, and one should be for career advances, that is existing employees who wants to get into the newer skills. And the last also career changes, right? Which is, take a bank, you have a lot of frontline workers, tell us, production support engineers, they're not hardcore tech workforce. How can you use their experience and knowledge about the bank domain and use them into technology programmers? You can't make everybody, but you still can make a big chunk of them. So I think the ideal solution, Chris, should be to have the right solution for career beginners and the right solution for career advances and also for career changes. So it is very important you should have such a comprehensive solution. Just trying to one size fits one. Like, I don't know who came with the concept of one size fits all. It never fits all, right? Just fits one. So have the right solution for the right audience, actually.
So maybe we can look at what some of the roadblocks are for some of these initiatives, right? We talk about how they become really valuable from kind of both ends of the spectrum, both the candidates as well as the employers. I'll say I don't see as much of this as I think I would in this space. And so naturally you think that there's going to be some opposition or some challenge to implementing these new types of model beyond just the fact that it is change. What are those roadblocks that organizations are experiencing, and maybe how are we getting beyond some of those roadblocks?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think it comes down to three things. So infrastructure, culture, and resources. So what I mean by infrastructure, I think a lot of organizations don't have like a good skills taxonomy of their organization. They actually don't know what skills are lacking and missing. And, LinkedIn can help with that, by the way, but that's another story. But yes, I think that is like, the first place that you need to start. And by culture, obviously going back to that story that I said about the chief learning officer with the chief technology officer, they haven't embedded a culture of learning yet within organizations. And that's obviously going to be huge. I think there's a stat, 56% of employees would do more learning if their manager recommended them a course. And as we know, since the pandemic, managers are totally burnt out. And so what we have to do is we have to help guide managers and give them the exact personalized content that their team needs and actually just really help them with that. That's going to be really important. And then the lack of resources. I mean, the macroeconomic climate, people don't have the budget anymore. They don't have the time. They're stretched, so this is a huge roadblock. So the really effective HR leaders that I'm seeing are taking a few steps. So they're either introducing LinkedIn Learning, and Josh Bersin, recently released a brilliant new article about LinkedIn Learning. So this isn't coming from me. I'm very biased, but the career development pathing and the personalized content and the role guides within LinkedIn Learning addresses this problem. Or they're outsourcing to a company like Revature that actually mentors and trains younger candidates, tech candidates, which is fantastic, so they're outsourcing. Or they're doing management development, obviously going back to the point that the manager is really actually quite critical with learning initiatives. So leadership development is a huge one. And yeah, I think I've forgotten the fourth one that I was going to say, but they're all super critical. And I think they're very good resolutions.
Yeah, I think those are excellent points. I mean, I think companies have got to start thinking about development and retention strategies as part of their talent acquisition efforts, right? An employee that gets hired that feels like they're being invested in becomes a loyal employee. That helps with retention. It enhances employer brand credibility, reduces future hiring costs because you've not only just hired that employee, but they see a career path that's going to pay dividends to them. The other thing that companies are also starting to do is try and connect those retention strategies to the measurement of their acquisition programs to understand from an advertising perspective, which sources, which channels of their actual acquisition investment are delivering employees that end up staying a lot longer. That's been a sales component a lot for a lot of acquisition strategies historically, but that measurement's now getting applied to a lot of other functions, particularly tech.
So I would say there are two critical process roadblocks, right? So one is currently it's a decentralized approach is what everybody have. The CIOs and CTOs have their own approach. The CHROs have a different approach. The organization have different approach. I think having a centralized common approach with acceptance from all stakeholders is very key. Most of the times where I see why good solutions are not going to be implemented is because of that roadblock. It's a very, very decentralized, different priorities is what's happening across different organizations. The other one is you cannot underestimate of not having an upskilling strategy for contingent workforce. So a big portion of development happens through contingent tech workforce. It's very important to have them, but you can't upskill them like your own employees because co-employment risk and everything. I think what will happen in the future is there will be expectations from contingent workforce provider to also have an upskilling strategy, right? Currently, it is like I find my talent, I give you great talent. That's it. I'm going to ring the bell and charge you money, and that's about it, right? But they will say that great. Apart from being with them and collecting timesheets, how you should know what they're doing, what help they need technically, right? I think contingent workforce will also have an upskilling strategy moving forward. I think they will be asked to have an upskilling strategy.
I like that, Ashwin. I told you I want to come back to the optimization side of this because I really want to think if an organization is trying to pursue this, how do we really get good at this? And I think this is maybe an interesting kind of perspective, especially for companies that maybe aren't tech companies. Coming from a previous organization, we were a health insurance organization. We had a lot of tech talent and required a lot of innovative tech resources to drive our organization forward. But in the grand scheme of it, we were not a very glamorous organization to work for. And so I wonder, is you're an organization that's trying to leverage this kind of an approach or really get that best talent, what can you do to really be successful or to stand out, be a differentiator in this space?
Yeah, I think we have to, right? So with the tech spend, the percentage of revenue, it's going up. For a software company, it ranges anywhere between 15 to 20%. For the banks, the financial institution ranges 8 to 10%. These are massive revenue generators. They spend 8 to 10%. And it's increasing, right? So every company's tech spend is going up. I think the right solution for optimization is, Chris, in my mind, is you have to unbundle the whole talent equation. You have to differentiate assessment to recruitment to training to upskilling to skilling, reskilling, continuous enable, unbundle the whole talent equation, work with the clients along with providers like Revature, and find ways how to collaborate and repackage it in the manner exactly the way that you want. And some organization, upskilling would be the key strategy. For some, talent mobility would be the key strategy. For some, it could be the exact opposite of it, right? So unbundling the whole equation, then working with the respective solution is the key. And that's why Revature's, our solution for that, we call it as TAS, which is Talent Enablement as a Service. So we sit with the client, unbundle everything, work with their team as a complementary service. Revature is not a substitute for an internal recruitment engine or a training engine or learning management engine. The best we work is when we are a complementary service. I think working with them and repackaging the way that we want and providing, that's the key for success, especially for optimization.
I like that. Matt, you used a good example earlier, even thinking about the perception to this talent as well. I think you said, using advertising that had people in suits and ties, representing that tech talent. Any other thoughts about how organizations can really think about that tech culture better aligned to it?
Well, I think it just has to become part of the overall story that they're telling. And one thing we've seen, especially in the last 6 to 9 months, are companies are specifically looking at their entire EVP framework to get more customized and nuanced, to figure out how to tell a better story to a variety of functions across their business, but particularly tech. And then the other thing that they're starting to do a lot more of is making sure that they've got the right multi-channel strategy out there. Speed to market to get to these candidates is going to be key. And so, having a narrow approach from a channel perspective is just going to mean that companies will be ultimately slower to hire to get them in the door. So making sure they've got the right, multi-channel strategy is going to be key.
Emma, any additional thoughts there about that
Yeah,
one?
I was thinking about it. I was actually thinking it might be a huge benefit being a smaller, more entrepreneurial company hiring tech talent because they get to work on larger scale projects. You can give them a title that it's a little bit more advanced than maybe they are, right? And, that's obviously quite important, with Gen Z. And, having them work on these projects, tell their friends, showcase it on LinkedIn, give them the right learning and development opportunities, as we've spoken about. Um, you know, you can dress it up and you can make it sound exciting. I used to work in graduate recruitment for 8 years, and I made the most ridiculous companies sound super exciting for candidates, and they're just happy to get on board and be offered an opportunity. So
I like that. So good marketing. That's where we
yeah,
start
yeah.
the campaign. Awesome. So I know we're going to come close on time here in a little bit, but maybe we can look at how we're seeing enterprises handle some of this unique landscape, maybe specifically from a training perspective. Ashwin, I think you've got maybe a good example of how organizations are addressing this.
Yeah, so I think training has become an essential piece, right? And I'm seeing new trends coming in, not just the conventional training, and they're also seeing a new concept of onboarding training, right? So you are hiring people. Amazon does that quite well. Probably there is still room for improvement, which is when everybody has to go through a mandatory couple of weeks of training, right? Whether it is a junior talent, mid-level, or senior. So one, for you to know the Amazon culture, what's the tech stack, how the CI/CD, everything happens, along with there will be gaps, and how do you fix the gaps? So we are seeing newer trends coming in. We are seeing continuous learning, and I think Matt mentioned it. There is no longer the half-life of a software engineer at which they measure technology change. That's gone. Today that's completely gone, that concept. Today you need continuous learners. Things have changed, right? Literally, continuous learning and continuous enablement is the core of it, right? So we are seeing these new things coming very seriously. But where we have not seen yet is, I like the stat, like Emma, you mentioned about the conversation between the CLO and the CTO. 25% should be learning. They are not willing to do learning as part of their regular working hours. At pretty much all the places, learning is expected to be outside your regular working hours, which is beyond 40 hours already. I think that change, to me, we are yet to see. There are many advancements happening, but unless somebody says that learning is also part of your actual working hours, none of these big implementation strategic ambitions can be achieved, actually.
I totally agree. And traditionally learning, as we've spoken about, I think now they're getting the seat on the table. I think everything is shifting, but it used to be a very push strategy and maybe the other way around. But what I'm trying to say is that exactly what Ashwin is saying, we need to integrate learning into the work day. It needs to become a priority. Managers need to sit there and actually embed it, like whether that is on the team meeting, or there is another team meeting baked in another day. But it's imperative, because otherwise all these skills are going to be redundant. It's going to have a huge impact to business.
So we've got one question. We're going to try and wrap up with a quick Q&A. So this one came from our audience talking about remote workers and how we can leverage them in this type of a scenario. So how do we convince candidates to relocate or even go into an office environment for these types of initiatives? Or is that even required?
I am old school. I might not be the right person to answer, but I think things are changing. I think there will be a new normal that is adapting. I think Asia and Europe has adapted to the new normal. I think US will also have that, which is a good hybrid of remote plus office work. I think that's the new normal that's going to happen. Some jobs absolutely can be done remotely. Some jobs cannot be done remotely, right? So that new normal will happen. It has not happened in US. US is slow to adapt. I believe there will be some adaptation that will happen.
I think getting people back into the office is a challenge for all leaders. It is, in my opinion, I think incredibly important for company culture, but for many of us, it's probably not practical to get anybody in the office 5 days when they were fully remote. I think that the things we need to start thinking about are how does an employee connect with your culture if they're remote? And so they're going to want to feel like they're continuing to be invested in, and learning and development is a huge pillar of that, and it's got to be considered. It becomes more important to the employee in the absence of the social environment of the old school, brick and mortar 5-day-a-week work week. And so I think those are things that we need to consider to keep company culture healthy, to make employees feel like they're continuing to be invested in.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that as well. Another initiative that we have at LinkedIn that I think is really awesome is a mentorship. So a mentorship opportunity. And so I actually mentor 3 or 4 SDs myself, and I speak to them about the importance and networking and meeting people. And so for younger generations, I think it's imperative, to be honest with you. Like, I am old fashioned too, that they're in the office. Someone like me who's a bit older, I've got 3 children, like it's a little bit more challenging, to be in the office that much. But learning and development, as Matt said, could be the key to this, encouraging people to come in. Maybe you use that as the draw. I don't know. Could be a good idea.
Yeah, I think that could be interesting. And Matt, I think you said it. I think every organization dealing with that across the board, really, as we've introduced a lot of this talent, maybe through periods where, I don't know, remote work has just become the new normal, right? It's just accepted. And now trying to shift back where it's maybe the culture that somebody has resonated with the most. I think that can be challenging. So I just want to take a second. We're going to wrap up here. And first, I just want to thank Revature for putting on this webinar and for sponsoring today and bringing some amazing speakers to have this conversation with us. So thank you, Revature, first off, for sponsoring, and thank you to our panelists for joining. Matt and Emma, I really appreciate your expertise, and I think you gave us some good things to think about here as we walk away from this webinar. We're going to leave everybody with a little bit of a takeaway. So we're going to give everybody an ebook compliments of Revature. So if you want to grab that QR code here on the screen, or we'll distribute this deck here probably within the next 48 hours to everybody that's joined. So you'll have an opportunity to download that as well. I'm also going to provide some links to our SIA research. For those of you that are members, you should be able to access all of these. There's a couple of our complimentary research papers like our Staffing Trends 2023, but some good information here to really see what's happening in the market, some of the trends, and better, we'll say, stay informed on all the changes and impacts that are happening across our staffing industry. With that, I'm going to say thank you to our audience as well for hanging out and listening to our topic today. And again, thanks for all of our speakers and to Revature. Hope everybody has a great day and hope everybody enjoyed our webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.